And welcome back, YouTube. I am Cole at Kitschy Flower, and today's video is a little bit of a chill one. So, basically, I'm just gonna do a Q&A for today. That rhymed. Yeah, I asked some of you over on Instagram and also here on YouTube. Yeah, I got quite a few, so thank you everyone who sent in a question. But yeah, I thought this would be just a fun little chit-chat video, kind of get to know me a little bit more. And so I guess a great question to start off right at the bat with is actually from Creative Heart, I do believe, over on Instagram. How did I get interested into vintage? Now, I know I've answered this probably a couple of times, or maybe it's in a live or two here and there, but I actually got into vintage and collecting through my parents. Both of them, you know, growing up, actually owned antique stores. My mom owned two, and then actually my father still does currently to this day. So yeah, I've pretty much just been raised in antique stores. Just being there a lot as a child really helped develop my own interests into collecting. And another question I got was, what was the first thing I started collecting? My first thing I started collecting truly was vintage troll dolls. Now, for some reason, I've always been really into them. Familiar with trolls, every 10 years or so, they kind of relaunch and come out with some more. So I definitely remember growing up when I was smaller. I think it was the treasure trolls, or maybe good luck troll. I don't know. It's the little ones with the, you would touch its palm and like it would change colors and reveal a message. But yeah, I really was into those. And then, you know, just being at antique stores, I would find these really bizarre looking ones from like the 60s. So that's really where I truly started my love for vintage toys. Because yeah, they definitely had quite a bunch of just really wacky ones. Personal favorite, I have 3 of these. These are the 2-headed trolls made by Unita. Really fantastic, a little bit on the harder to find side when it comes to trolls. And then just like goofy looking ones. I love the mohair and the felt clothing. I just think they are absolutely fantastic. I love this one. I actually picked this one up pretty recently, last time I was in Virginia. But yeah, so that's, you know, that's where I started my collection. And then as any kind of collector knows, it grows from there. You start looking at other things. And yeah, so vintage trolls were my first start into the realm of vintage. And then I got the question from Lumps over on Instagram, which is a plush artist. I've actually done a restoration for her. So, sorry, I should have been giving the names of who's answering the questions. But anyways, what was my most difficult restoration? And it's kind of funny. Oddly enough, you guys have already seen it. I've done a full-length video on the topic. I would probably say definitely the number 3 ponytail Barbie I did, just for the fact of having the issue with the bleeding of the hair. So if you haven't seen the whole process of this lovely gal, insert it maybe here if I figure out how to do it, or maybe it will be in the bio, I don't know. But yeah, so when I was steaming her and setting her hair, what I thought was all natural mohair, it was like bleeding blue, so I had to fully do a color treating session on her face. It literally was like, I don't know, it was like a baby blue. I'll insert in picture right here. So that was definitely quite stressful, especially just because, I mean, if you are kind of in the vintage Barbie realm, number 3s are a little bit on the harder to find side. Granted, she's not a number 1 or a number 2, but generally, like I've mentioned before, the lower in number the ponytail Barbies are, the more expensive and sought after. So when I accidentally turned her face blue, I was definitely taken aback, but I was able to, you know, render the situation and make make amends. I mean, I really can't tell. But yeah, I would definitely say she was my most difficult. Usually, I mean, I do a lot of vintage plush, and at this point, it's not too difficult. I mean, maybe sometimes some of the face paint, you know, can be a little bit tricky if we're trying to get it just right. But overall, the Barbie. And then also asked the question of fashion inspiration. And that's a great one. I kind of look everywhere. Now I will say I pretty much just wear clothing from the 60s and 70s, some of the from the 50s. But yeah, so I mean, obviously kind of like mod style icons back then. Like my favorite personally is George Harrison. So really looking at some of his like wacky and, you know, cool eccentric clothing back in the day is really fun to find like some similar pieces. And then definitely growing up, I was super into, I mean, I really never wore J fashion, aka Japan fashion, but I was always super into like looking through the old fruit magazines, really seeing what people were wearing, you know, on the street, what the street style and, you know, how people express themselves through their clothing. I think is just super fascinating personally. Like I've mentioned, very briefly was a fashion major once upon a time, so I definitely have a deep love for fashion. Actually, in the reselling gig, actually back when I was still in high school, I sold some clothing, vintage clothing online, and also I did toys and kind of stuff back then. But yeah, I did a lot of clothing. So that's kind of, you know, I have a long history in it. I've been wearing vintage clothing for the most part for, I think I really started when I was like 14, maybe 15, and I'm 25 now. So it's been about a decade of collecting for sure. So yeah, other style inspirations, I'd say like modern, I'd say like Chloe Sevigny. Honestly, anything that she's done, I just think is so fantastic. But I just love the eclectic, you know, style of her, for putting older and newer together, putting higher end and lower end. I just always like what she's wearing. I think she's very stylish. And then who else do I think is really cool and stylish? I don't know. Honestly, I get a lot of inspiration just off like Instagram, from photographers. And like I had mentioned, the old fruit magazines back in the day. But yeah, I think that's about that for the style. So then I got a question on what are my quote unquote unicorn finds, and that is from Lucky B Loot. I hope I didn't just butcher your name. I'm sorry. So yeah, what have I been looking for? What is on my list of things that I would just love to have in my collection? Definitely, I think I mentioned this on a podcast I did recently. Insert here. I would definitely say a Rushton lamb. I would really love. It's definitely high up on the Holy Grail. And other, I'd probably say any of the inbox like Twiggy fashions from the 60s. Granted, I have a few Twiggy, you know, dolls made by Mattel, but I don't have any of them in, or the fashions, I should say, that are in the original packaging. There were a few posted to Etsy, or no, I think it was eBay, but I think they were like 500 each, and I'm just like, I don't know, maybe one of these days. But yeah, definitely would love anything just vintage Twiggy, anything with really cool graphics. So next question I got was, how old was I when I started repairing or first fixed up a toy? So that's a really good question. I'd probably say, oh goodness, I don't know. I mean, I have very like distinct memories of me being really young, maybe like with old dolls that would like, the rubber band in their leg would like pop and have to replace that. So I mean, I can remember that as early as maybe like 10. But when I really started, like, I guess maybe customizing or doing more in-depth work, I'd probably say I was more around like 14, 15. That's when I really started getting into like the Blythe dolls and just other retro things, of like, you know, using my hands to mend her. But yeah, I'd say about 14 or 15 when I really got into stuff. But I remember before then, you know, fixing up little things here and there, repaint. Kind of always been into it, honestly. So, and then, I got what is my oldest thing in my collection. I'd probably say it's probably one of my antique bisque German dolls. They're definitely well over 100 years old. So I'd probably say those are some of my oldest pieces for sure. At least toy-wise. I mean, I collect some Victorian jewelry, specifically the morning jewelry. So I guess that's kind of around the same time. My favorite Rushton, which I thought was a really sweet question. And you probably, I don't know, you may or may not already know this. It's kind of easy. I absolutely love this one. I have restored this one actually, so full YouTube video down below. But it's two of my favorite subject matters, which is pink and bunnies. So, and it's in really, really good shape. So definitely hands down has to be my favorite. I really, really love this one. And it's a nice large size. So definitely my favorite Rushton. And I also got the question, did anybody teach me how to do repairs? And the answer is kind of yes and no. I originally kind of started off just kind of doing things my own. But then once I started really getting into like specific things, so maybe let's refer like vintage Barbie, then I would seek out like groups and stuff and, you know, try to talk to people about what they do and what have you, and just kind of gather information along the way, and trying to find, you know, resources on the internet as much as possible. And again, trial and error. I pretty fortunate, you know, you get to work on, at least my suggestion is, if you want to start customizing or doing repairs or what have you, try to get like just a big lot of dolls or whatever you want to work on for cheap. So, you know, if you do end up maybe messing up something because you're, you know, trying to get into it, it's fine. You got it for cheap. And then, you know, you can maybe pick it up at a later date once you have a little bit more experience under your belt. Because I know I've done that. I've started on things and then have been like, oof, I don't know how I'm going to finish this. And then end up picking it up, you know, months, maybe even years later. So yeah, I'd definitely say that is that. Got the question is, what inspired me to resell? And that's a good question. Like I've mentioned, I've been kind of doing it off and on for years, but once really the pandemic happened, you know, that's really kind of when I picked it up even more, just because more spare time. I was also currently working in a salon at the time. It just, you know, no ill will, but it just wasn't the right fit for the job. So yeah, I started making content, and then the content kind of promoted, you know, the Etsy shop I was doing at the time. Now, since I've, you know, been doing a little bit of this and that. So, you know, yeah, I'd definitely say like full-time doing it, I'd say about maybe close to 2 years at this point, which is really insane. Actually, it's very exciting. Or I do get this question quite a lot, is how do I get my hair so white? And honestly, I mean, I have had platinum, you know, bleached out hair for, again, 10 years plus, kind of off and on. Sometimes I'll go in between, you know, my silvery white and then having like my natural hair color. So there's a few, you know, photos out there with my natural kind of like dishwater blonde. But yeah, you know, just like maintaining the roots, and definitely find a really good purple shampoo you like, and definitely like a bond builder, so you keep the integrity of your hair. So like Olaplex, or you can find some dupes nowadays a lot easier at like Sally's or what have you. But yeah, I'd just say a good toner, a good bond builder. I actually do it all myself. I don't know, I like to be in control when it comes to my hair. I mean, granted, I've been doing it for 10 plus years, so kind of have learned. I've definitely broken off some hair in the past. Actually, probably about 3 years ago, I had it pretty short. But anyways, yeah, that's how I keep my hair pretty white. And don't overuse the purple shampoo, because it also can turn your hair like purple. So I, you know, use it sparingly. Granted, my hair is naturally blonde, so it's not as hard for me to achieve as somebody with like pitch black hair. So that's the whole little spiel on my hair. Kitschy Richie, he was originally, he asked me how long I've been collecting. I'd say like really kind of collecting, I'd say like around 8 with the old troll dolls. At least that's when I can remember kind of accumulating them, or starting to. And then he also asked what was my most like high ticket expensive item, which granted, I'm not huge on talking about like, I don't know, prices and stuff, but one thing I will say I've definitely paid up on, which usually, you know, I don't mind paying up on like a Rushton or something, but I'd probably say, which you've definitely seen her here before, but I'd say definitely the Kamar Mona doll. She is absolutely fantastic. I probably honestly ended up paying like above retail for her. But yeah, she was definitely a pricier item. But don't regret buying her whatsoever. I'm really happy to have her in my collection. But yeah, it was definitely, oof, I had to bite the bullet on the price tag. But, you know, I feel very fortunate I was able to get her. So there's that. And then I got the question, will I always collect? And probably I'd say I imagine I will. Like I've mentioned before, you know, interests kind of go in and out, and you get really into collecting one item, and then, you know, you start collecting another and kind of phase things out. So yeah, I always see myself collecting for the most part, certainly. And then I got a good question. Is there anything that you regret buying? Oh, nothing that like super comes to mind personally, like, oof, like that put me, I don't know. I'd probably say sometimes, you know, you get, this especially happens at like estate sales, you get really excited and, you know, adrenaline is high to get in there. And so you just start grabbing. And then sometimes once, you know, you check out and you get home and really start looking at stuff, sometimes, you know, because I pick up a lot of old ceramics and fragiles, sometimes there's been a hairline or something that I missed at the estate sale. So I'd probably say that kind of fits under the question. But yeah, I don't think there's anything that I'm just like, oh my gosh, I really, really regret buying that. At least that I can think of, which maybe that's for the best. And then I got the question of favorite decade in vintage. It's pretty easy. Well, a certain decade, that's kind of hard, but I really like anything from, I'd say the late 40s, early 50s through like late 70s for the most part. So definitely the kitsch era, very groovy. I like the mod, psychedelic kind of stuff. So definitely kind of in that time span. Then I actually got this question, which I thought was really fun, is how do I create a style? And this was actually asked by my friend Perry. So thanks for the question. Yeah, I would say, how did I create a style? I mean, granted, I collect a lot of vintage. So again, another way to really, if you're into vintage, to kind of create what you like and what you don't is go through some old vintage magazines, or, you know, go online. and just like flip through catalogs. I think that's really, really fun to kind of see what you like, what catches your eye. And then also just like go thrifting, try on a bunch of stuff. You know, you really, I mean, it's been proven time and time again, you don't really have to have a huge budget to create your own personal kind of style. It's really just what makes you happy, what you feel good in, what you gravitate towards putting on. I think sometimes, and myself included, we can try to like put ourselves in like a box of like quote unquote aesthetic, but at the end of the day, it's really just important that you like your items and their, you know, their quality, they're there to, you know, to last. I think that's really important. Obviously trying to be sustainable as much as possible, at least for me, is really, really important. So again, I just pretty much wear vintage, so it's pretty easy in that regard. Granted, you know, pick up socks and underwear out and about, but and then I got the question, best way to find vintage toys through Chiffon and Charm on Instagram. Thank you so much. So I'd say really just like stock eBay. If there's something you're after, like if you're looking for like anthropomorphic, like teapots, just have that safe search on, and you know, try to build connections with fellow collectors, resellers. I think that's super important, which sometimes I feel like goes overlooked. Because, you know, I mean, we're all trying to make money and what have you, but I think it's really important to connect with each other because, you know, one of these days, maybe I'll come across a anthropomorphic teapot that I don't keep for myself. That, you know, I'll hit you up and say, oh, hey, I found this, and what have you. So I think it's really important to have connections. I've been very fortunate in, you know, being able to chat with people and then be hit up, you know, a couple weeks or months later down the road, and, you know, they text me, oh, I found this awesome thing that I thought you might like. And, you know, it's come definitely very much in handy. So yeah, definitely just scour the internet. I mean, there are so many like sites. I mean, eBay, obviously, Etsy, I mean, there's a ton of them. You just have to look. I think one thing that I feel like sometimes people forget is Ruby Lane. Granted, I feel like I used to buy a lot more on there a few years ago, so I don't know necessarily nowadays, but I feel like that one's a great source of antique and vintage things that you can find. That is specifically, you know, antiques and vintage. Favorite places to shop? Well, I think it depends on the day on how many things I find, but I really do love, I guess I'll give like areas. I really love going Tennessee. I really like doing Tade trips up there, Kentucky. Obviously I'm in Georgia, so I am able to travel here and there. But yeah, I'd definitely say my favorite probably go-to is Tennessee for sure, because I always come back with a car full. So no matter when I go. So definitely Tennessee, I really like those whole like antique districts and what have you. So yeah, I think that's about it, at least everything I've written down. So I so appreciate you guys watching. Of course, I am Cole here at Kitschy Flower, so if you're not subscribed, be sure to. I'm also on Instagram, TikTok, of course, my Etsy shop, so go check out that. Vintage and antiques and a lot of funness over there 24/7. And then of course I have my weekly Sunday Whatnot sales, which granted I'm filming this on a Saturday, so there won't be one Easter Sunday, basically taking the day off. But other than that, I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching, hanging out with me, all the new people that have subscribed to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you guys being here and hanging out with me, and more videos to come. I will note on this next Wednesday upcoming, I will be doing a drop sale, so I won't be doing a live because I have, I think, 2 or 3 other lives I think 3 other lives that week. So I'm gonna definitely be busy. So I'm gonna be doing a drop sale. So everything kind of like week before last. I just, hold up things, give you a price, and then whoever, comments the item first will win. So update on that. I will see you guys very, very soon, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.